Hi everybody, this is Brian here from quantlabs.net. We've got Peter Gula talking about the NAs within R. Go ahead, Peter, with your presentation, man.
And thanks, Brian. So it seems, I mean, what I've seen and what I've heard in both blog sites and in the academic arena that NAs really have been prevalent and are going to continue to be a problem in the future of R until there's basically a more rigid structure for eliminating them from the data. And they just have been traditionally kind of a byproduct of what is what was the original desire of the developers to deal with any kind of a file refunction. I guess I'm not sure exactly again what that was, but it has. Go ahead.
Peter, we got one question, very basic question from Kuz. He's asking, what's an NA? I know it means not available, but...
Right, exactly. So, like, it is, you just answered the question, but
yeah.
that's, it basically, it means that the value is, it can't be read. Um, so, and if you want to, for instance, if you're coding in R, say on your console, and you just want to see if there's any NAs in your vector, which typically is what you're going to be reading or writing from, or I'm sorry, writing to or reading from, you're going to just, you can type the function is NA, and you'll find out if you have any, again, not available values. So that's what that is.
Well, from what I remember, NA's generated by, as you said, division by zero. So if you have anything and you're running a calculation to divide by zero, it's going to generate some of those values in your vector to return
Right,
NA.
right, because NA really is can be synonymous in R with NAN, which is I think what you're referring to, NAN, and I don't. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm confusing that with. Is that C that has NAN? I'm not sure. I know that R had that as, and you kind of get those two synonymously when you can give NAs or NANs with an integer.
Yeah.
If you're trying to figure out if you have if your integer is anyways, I'm sorry. If your integer is being read in or is actually reading the value used. So go ahead.
Yeah, I know MATLAB has the same thing where it's not a number.
Right.
NAN.
And then basically, that it is a source of confusion, but I mean, maybe for developers too, because it seems like NA comes up when it should, when it's actually the machine actually intends, or the compiler is really needing to give you an NAN and not a number. It will give you an NA, I think, a lot of times too, and so that's just again kind of the perpetual problem, and it seems like it kind of just permeated all over the place. NAs do. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Seem to do that. So,
Yeah.
anyways, did you have any other questions?
No, that's it so far.
Okay.
That's for Kuzi. He understand that now. So
Go
go ahead,
ahead.
man.
Go ahead. I'm
No,
sorry.
go ahead, Peter. You can continue if you want.
All right. So, yeah, sure. So I'm sorry. The argument. Um, so if you want to, basically, if you have a problem with NAs, typically, if you have a vector, you can do a typical just a assignment operation, a reassignment. You can overwrite the vector with your arrow operator and essentially overwrite that value by, well, you essentially eliminate it from the vector with the is NA function that I just mentioned. And in addition to using this, it's basically a minus sign or a minus operator. So this is it's not that uncommon. I think it's pretty well known kind of an assignment, and you can use this right here essentially that I'm pointing to, this function to eliminate your NAs from your vector. But the problem is sometimes is when you're actually, again, when you're trying to just eliminate values that you want to, you don't want in your vector simply because, like I mentioned, before. You have a mathematical operation that's going to create problems. You want to have division by zero. So if you try to eliminate it by just referencing the index, this itself will lead to an NA. So you basically you're in a kind of a circular loop, it would seem. And I came across something that was really kind of a novelty to me, at least. When I was in a kind of a bit of a time crunch, and I tried to use RM, which is another kind of a predefined function in R. But it's typically used, I think, to remove whole objects and whole maybe files, or if the file has actually been read in as an object, and to remove them from your data set if your data set is a vector, or if it is, maybe if it's a directory that you've read in a file or a directory, like as a table or something along those lines. So you can actually you can use RM as traditionally used in that sense, but I actually tried it on just removing individual elements from a vector or an array, and that worked as well. And not only did it work, but it actually eliminated that NA problem. And for some reason or other, I can't tell you why, but the data seemed to stay a lot more intact when I used it. So, so that's the first part of the presentation. It basically just again talks about not overestimating the use of just common script commands, scripting commands in R whenever you're coding your own functions, and maybe compile or building your own packages, just to keep in mind some of these basic predefined scripting commands that can actually help you a lot. So, any other questions? I'm going to keep going then.
Not so far. Anybody? You guys got questions? We only got ourselves and Tony and Kuz. If you guys got any questions at all? I don't think so.
Okay. So I'm going to try. Like I said, my cursor is a little screwy, so let me get down to her.
Well, just so you know, you're working off of my desktop right now, right?
Am I?
Yeah. Like I said, I can pass the control over to you if you want. Make you the presenter.
No, I mean it's fine as long as you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I think.
If you scroll down whenever you're ready.
Yeah. So right now you are working on, I believe, going into the third paragraph here. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So actually, we just talked about kind of minimizing the risk for your for this loss of data, creation of NAs. Go ahead. No.
No.
Well, not in addition to just basically the NA problem. There's just and this is kind of a side product, but it sometimes is kind of related to the data integrity, the whole loss of data, and that is just loss of precision in these operations that we're talking about. So if you're trying to do any kind of complex math or any kind of extended series of mathematical operations that are computationally expensive, you are you're risking eventually loss of data precision, and that's just common across any programming language, really. But more so, it seems in R, if you as you get closer and closer to your precision level, your machine epsilon, so to speak. So, and again, I'm not too aware of myself anything newer than I think 3.00 is the newest version, but I myself have been using 2.14 for the last 8 months. So, anyways, so maybe things have gotten better, but still, it seems like 3.00 this version still has a problem with their cooking. They still have not come up with a universal standard for where they will or how they're going to deal with data loss. Whether they just throw a warning when they get to a certain point, or in R, there's always the possibility that the machine will just the compiler will just recycle the data, which basically just produces a bunch of redundant digits and a bunch of kind of meaningless data at the end of your string of decimals. So, anyways, Um, I mean, I guess just to kind of highlight this and quote what I just recently saw on one of the blogs is this is one of their functions that that they're basically planning for a release in the next version, which is I guess 3.1, 3.01. I don't know when that's going to come out, but
Yep.
um, it's just digit loss is a predefined function that basically it's just basically a message to the user when it gets to that point that they're just going to either allow it and basically just cut the data at the point where they are producing the redundant digits to recycling or whatever, and or if it's not going to be allowed, then I guess maybe they'll just throw a warning, and I guess the other thing is basically they could just I don't know what forbid would be as an option, but essentially it really is kind of pointless. You know, once you get past, I guess what either the user is getting to the point where they're putting all this computationally expensive um, routines into the computer, and they're coming up with at the end of their data, they have 10 digits, and then after that, which is not bad, I guess, but if you start to recycle at that point, then you're looking at, I mean, for instance, pi, can be calculated up to, I don't know, obviously thousands of digits on a lot of machines, but if you cut it short of 10 digits, you're really doing pi a disservice, I would think. Wouldn't you all agree,
Oh, for sure.
So, anyways, I mean, so I guess the way to get around this, really, for right now, in the meantime, while they're still kind of have this up in the air, is to kind of code your own algorithms or your own procedures to deal with your mathematical procedures. So if you want to, say, for instance, perform a series of multiplications or divisions, you can actually, and a lot of this has gone over in some basic manuals that are out, that are pre-available. You can, first off, keep in mind, a lot of divisor and maybe in particular, like GCD, Greatest Common Divisor algorithms are out there already in development community. But come up with your own would be kind of a good idea, and maybe um, using a division algorithm, and maybe as a portion of maybe a multiplication procedure that you're going to do, and keeping in mind that division is obviously the inverse of the multiplication. So at that point, you could break it down even further and say, okay, well, I'm going to do the inverse multiplication, I'm going to divide, but not only that, I'm just going to, I have to basically perform the data set conversion at that point from if you have a fraction, to obviously converting it to a decimal. And that in and of itself could be something you could do, and you might want to do manually to preserve your data integrity. So, keeping in mind the basic idea of what your decimals or your negative exponentials on which are your negative digits and powers of 10, what they are, and just going with keeping on top of that, you can actually, I guess, go into some examples of how you can um, keep your code basically self-manageable. I mean, you're basically in charge of your own multiplication at that point, and your own division using inverse multiplication. Basically, and then doing the multiplication on that data set, or on those input values. I'm sorry, um, with maybe a convolution procedure, which is not something that is typically thought of and maybe not done, but I mean, multiplication really is a convolution of two integers, and it's basically the sum of a series of products, and that is really, in short, what a convolution is, and to put a real short, skinny spin on it. But And since Convolve is a pretty useful function to have anyway on your own, if you're going to be doing any development in computational science or in risk analysis, that might be a good idea to have on your system anyway. So um, now I mean I've done I try to do my own Convolve and convolution function, and that it doesn't take a whole lot of time, and I'm not the expert coder, and I was able to do it. But I guess one shortfall you do want to be aware of is that if you do try and use the predefined the convolve function that is in the R library, and I think even C++, the numerical recipes version, or numerical recipes library in C++ has, again, it has its own convolve function, but they both pretty much use Fourier transform, and that will, it adds a great deal of computation to the procedure, so you will slow down your machine if you use that, and you probably want to try and do your own. So that's kind of a mouthful. Hopefully that was easy to follow. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was.
Not, if,
Go ahead, man.
and a lot of this pretty much is spelled out at the bottom here. Brian, I guess you're pretty familiar with like the numerical recipes library in C. Maybe do you have anything to add to that? I mean, because I know that.
Go ahead, man.
Just saying,
No. Finish your thought, man.
no, I just was saying that there's it does the portion that I was talking about maybe doing you're performing your own conversion, from whatever base you're using to decimal.
Yeah.
If you're trying to convert your radix or your base 10 number to decimal, there are some other predefined functions that can do that. I don't know specifically how to use them. I mentioned it here at the bottom of my little manuscript, but I would not propose or purport to be an expert on using them. I wouldn't know the shortfalls of trying to use them, but they are listed there.
Right.
And it's part of the R library. I don't know if that would be any easier, but anyways, so it can kind of pick and choose what you want to use for which libraries you want to take a crack at just using, and other ones that you want to kind of try and recreate and reprogram and have on your own system for yourself. That's kind of what I've learned, and hopefully maybe I can get something submitted here to the team here that might be of use to them before they kind of have any more of these PhDs shooting hateful emails at them. I don't know.
Oh wow. I can offer some thought on it in the next little bit, but there was a question from Tony. I think you've kind of indirectly answered it, but anyways, let's give it a shot. He says I'm new to R, just curious to NA occurrences. Is it due to R language architecture limitations or something else that can be addressed in later releases? I mean, you pretty well focused on a lot of it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, getting down to you answered more of the architecture portion by saying, I don't see how R bypasses anything that, say, for instance, MATLAB seems to be able to bypass. Anyways.
Like from my perspective, let's say, for example, in MATLAB, the core MATLAB language kind of takes care of all these calculations for you. Because it's being owned by one vendor, right? So there's not a lot of this open debate on how to proceed as a language, and I think that's one of the advantages that MATLAB brings to the table. Now, in terms of R and C, let's say the disadvantage with C is that you have to manage your own memory. And it's the same thing here with R, where you have to manage your own basic calculations like multiply and whatnot, so you can avoid your NA issues that a lot of people run into. Go ahead.
I guess it would be nice if MATLAB would come with a little bit more, I guess, widely distributed versions that are a little bit more easier to access if you're not an academic.
Yeah.
But I think pretty much, I guess, being it is as it is. I've seen. I mean, the our it does have a lot of pre compiled and pre packaged functions.
Yeah.
There are available. There are a lot of different even data sets that are available in R so you can just, if you want to, for instance, if you don't want to go onto some expensive server, for instance, and to get your data, and maybe you want to see past sets of data that are just already out there. Chances are that R does have them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing that what is out there. I won't even go into the linking issue with R because it's another matter entirely. But like I said, it is what it is, and it has the flexibility to give you the option to actually run your own libraries in conjunction with whatever tree that you're loaded, or whatever tree you've logged into or actually loading packages from.
Yeah.
And so that helps a little bit as opposed to just maybe writing some driver functions in MATLAB. But I mean, it's kind of pick and choose what you like to do. So
yeah. I'm not sure where Python is in all this, but I tried to port my code, or actually this was both R and Python, where the language itself is not very what I call future proof. So let's say if you have a script, let's say running 2.14, and you want to take that R script and then move it into R point, was it 3.03?
Yeah, I don't know what's coming out.
And the script, yeah, and the script breaks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then Python as well has got the same problem between this 2.7 and 3.x. There seems to be this the formatting or the compatibility of one version isn't compatible with the next major release. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Once they start supporting the new version, basically the old one will be almost debunked at that point.
Yeah.
It just depends on how much extra time you want to spend on kind of troubleshooting your own program and maybe hacking through and coming up with these portions of your own program that you'll have to code yourself. But anyways, sometimes it might be a little bit fun to do that, and other times you make it a little more of a time crunch. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. But the thing is, I think that's why like languages like C and C++ are still out there in big numbers, because that's what a lot of banks use. They have their own APIs for these sort of numerical libraries, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have any in particular that you try and use at all that are
for C++?
Yeah, right. I mean, did you ever use Eclipse, or what do you prefer?
Well, I've used Java, and I've used Eclipse and NetBeans. Like I said, I moved into .NET. Oh man, two years ago. I haven't really looked. Yeah, I haven't looked back versus because I've done a lot of Linux development, and I find it's quite hard to maintain it, because like I want to develop algorithms and not have to worry about the operating system and all the dependencies that go with the tool chain in terms of all the compiler and all the different libraries to get something working. I find when I'm working with both MATLAB and .NET, I'm not experiencing a lot of those kind of headaches. In a nutshell, that's where I use Visual Studio more than anything else as well. It's more of just a technical choice. It's nothing to do with I prefer Windows over Linux. Nothing to do with that. I just get stuff done a lot faster, both in MATLAB and .NET, from my experience.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I wish I'd had more an opportunity to. Myself, I'm using Windows on this computer right now, but
right.
the memory limitations on this one are pretty pronounced. So I have to stick to my desktop, which currently is Linux.
Right.
Hopefully, get that up and running soon. But
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, that's how I work it. But you know, Linux is out there. It's good. It has its advantages as well. I find we just did a webinar a few weeks ago where the same guy said the same thing. He did something in C++. If he used both .NET and MATLAB, he would have saved himself probably at least a year of development. You know what I mean? So
pretty realistic, I guess.
yeah, it's pretty extreme. Yeah, I mean, I always say open source has its advantages, but it comes with a cost a lot of time too. So, from my experience.
No, yeah, I mean, I guess I stick to the open source when I'm at the universities that actually support those.
Yeah,
those
yeah.
servers,
I mean, there's nothing wrong with open source, but when you go into a more production environment, it's just something you may have to keep in mind. It just depends on your ultimate goal. Because I'm a one-man show, and I just don't have a lot of time to tinker with this and that in the world of open source and Linux. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
Um,
I guess if you have any other questions, I guess I don't have anything else to add.
yeah, I think, let me see if Tony's got some questions here. I know Kuz dropped off. Tony asked, what applications in R have you developed or implemented? That's for you, I guess, Peter.
What applications?
Yeah, what kind of applications are...
So basically they're all numeric, they're all front end numeric applications. It would basically just be small front end packages that do some of the stuff that I've talked about here today. For instance, the convolution function, or something along the lines of like a primes divisor algorithm or something like that would just basically alleviate the need for computation when you're using some prepackaged like front end software. I don't know, like maybe if you're trying to use like Visual Basic, I don't know what else you could be using, but these libraries, you know, or these little mini packages that I've worked on, and there are many. They're again one or two functions at the most. If it's two function package, it basically has one function calling the other, and it hasn't imported any extensive C libraries or C header files, but they would be useful, say, like if you wanted to do again, if you want to try and do a Fourier like a fast Fourier transform, and you want to do a convolution of the two functions, or you're trying to break your Fourier transform down into steps, you need to specify however many steps you want to do it. Maybe the divisor, or I don't know. I mean, but anyway, so they're just all basically numeric. Again, procedures, and they're all front end stuff that any user could use. You don't have to be an object-oriented programmer to use them. You don't have to. They're not use extensive libraries, and they don't deal at all with importing or exporting files. So that's it.
Well, I guess if Tony's got any other questions at all, let me just see if he's got any other questions. Not so far. If not, how long was that presentation? About 40 minutes or so? Tony says it was a good discussion. Thank you, Peter and Brian.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
I guess I'm a little long-winded. Maybe I didn't have a chance to have anybody else chime in, but
yeah.
Maybe next time, I guess. I don't
Yeah,
know.
for sure. Well, I think part of it is that we usually have our presentations at 7, and
Okay.
it may have thrown people off because it was at 6 o'clock, right?
Yeah, it is. I guess there's another meetup group I'm going to be going to maybe in the next month.
Okay.
Maybe throw a heads up. I don't know if any of this will be talked about, but if I pick up anything at that meetup group, which hopefully I will, there are a bunch of our developers in the California area. Maybe I'll shoot some information over.
Okay, yeah, just throw them up on the meetup group, or just email me and I'll promote them for you.
That's it. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, man.
Thanks again for all your technical support. And I guess I'd like to maybe hear more about where you're going with Quant here in the near future. If I get closer to finishing my program, I would like to hear more about doing some development on the back end and not necessarily just front end scripting. So
Right.
okay.
Okay, man. Well, I appreciate you coming out and putting this together. It's quite useful for people that'll probably watch this video.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate your time and
No
have a
problem.
good one, huh? And,
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
have a good-
Thanks for coming out, Brian. Tony. And Peter, thanks again. So I'll talk to you guys later. And I'll put this up on YouTube probably later tonight.
Okay, take care.
Okay, man.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, man. Bye.